Hello to the Riggs and Murdoch that lives deep in each of our hearts. Do you remember the first Lethal Weapon and how awesome it was? I mean, seriously, just one of the best buddy cop movies ever made, if not the best. Do you remember the two sequels that followed over the next 5 years? No? Well, do you remember the fourth installment that followed hot on their heels 6 years later? No? Well, today we have our second live episode, as in we are in the same room together, and we take a journey to a simpler time, before Mel Gibson's anti-Semitism came out, and when Joe Pesci was still in movies. This is Crushed Celluloid. Yeah, buddy. Woo!
Yeah.
Woo!
So,
Joe Pesci! Woo!
so we're here today to talk about cat people.
Motherfucking cat people!
Sadly, that's not true. It sounds much more interesting to talk about cat people again than to talk about the movie we did watch today, Lethal Weapon 4.
This Lethal Weapon 4, the action equivalent of a 2-hour improv class.
Yeah,
right? It's like they're inventing the set pieces as they go along.
It's the sequel nobody asked for.
That's
nobody wanted. It apparently went into production just a few months before it was released. This was all rushed. They didn't have a finished script in place. They were still figuring out the ending as they were filming, so that makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It was the world was a strange place in 1998.
Apparently, and I think this is a really 1998 movie, because I want to say it's a reaction to the PC-ness of the Clinton administration, because there's a lot of racism going on in this movie.
So much racism.
It's all towards Asians. It's all pretty much directly at Asians.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of Asian humor, there's a lot of black humor, and there's a lot of gay humor.
A lot of gay stuff, yeah. So I think that was kind of a reaction hey, we're just going to make a movie that's not PC and the world's going to fucking love it.
And I don't know what happened with this, man. Because the first 3 Lethal Weapon movies, I think the third one is the most forgettable for me. But the first 2 are fucking awesome. And again, all done by pretty much the same people. Richard Donner directed this one the same way he did with all the other ones. I will say, though, the screenplay is written by a guy named Channing Gibson. Not related to Mel Gibson.
Oh.
But he also wrote the screenplays for such great movies as Cradle to the Grave and Walking Tall, the Rock remake.
Oh.
But it did take 3 people to come up with a story for this movie. And those 3 people collectively have given us movies like Shanghai Noon and Herbie Fully Loaded and the third Mummy movie and The Devil's Advocate.
It's starting to click. When you said Devil's Advocate, it comes together. The thing about Lethal Weapon is I went through a phase when I was younger where I got really into the Lethal Weapons movie. Really loved the first one, then kind of went and watched the other 2. I don't remember much of any of them, even the first one. But I remember about a year later, Lethal Weapon 4 came out, and I was really into it. And I think I went back. But so I only have vague-ish memories, and Lethal Weapon 4 is actually the one that sticks out strongest in my mind.
Yeah, well, I know I definitely saw Lethal Weapon 4, but I remembered very little of it going into this. I remember the least about 3. I saw that once a long time ago. The first 2 I've revisited not even that long ago, and the first one still really holds up. It is a good movie.
Yeah, no, I think about the first one, because I definitely know the classic suicide talking about that scene.
Well, also the original was written by Shane Black as well, so there was really good talent behind the writing and the dialogue of that movie. Unlike this film,
this movie, I'm guessing they're improving a lot, because essentially the dialogue is let's step on each other's line so nothing can be heard.
They're just yelling at each other the entire time. It was fucking grating. Because just trying to understand what anyone is saying is just, you have to zone out and just hear yelling.
And it's exhausting, and there's... I guess let's go ahead and jump into it. What else?
Well, I will say one thing about the background of this movie is that apparently, it did pretty well. It was the third grossest of the Lethal Weapon movies, but they're not in the order you might think.
Really?
The first movie is actually the least grossing movie of the Lethal Weapon franchise. It was
Okay.
2, 3, 4, and 1, which was weird.
So 1 is the highest?
1 is the lowest grossing.
So
out of
2
any
is
of
the
them.
highest.
2 is the highest.
Okay, that is strange.
But I guess it kind of makes sense that it was a sequel. People were excited about it
Yeah.
because of the first one. But yeah, I was kind of surprised to find out that the first one was so down.
Well,
on the
I have to
list.
say that the fourth one, I know they pushed it a lot.
Well, that was the thing too, is that I thought this couldn't be right, but I double checked several sources. But the budget for this movie was estimated at about $140 million.
Yeah.
And at first, I didn't think that could have been correct. But seeing a lot of what happened in this movie, a lot of money went into it. But I think it cost under $100 million to make the film.
Yeah,
I think
yeah.
it was about $90 million, but $50 million of that was just their advertising budget.
I could see that because I remember a bunch
They
of advertising
pushed
surround it. And
But yeah, it actually did pretty well. It grossed a total of $285.5 million worldwide. 130 was domestic, 155 foreign. But yeah, the only other things I want to say about this movie is that, of course, this is the first Lethal Weapon movie where Mel Gibson does not have a mullet. So that was sadly missed in this
Yeah.
film. I think I read that the body count is 30 in this movie. It seemed like more, but apparently
I would say
it's
30 sounds about
yeah.
right.
Joe Pesci was nominated for a Worst Supporting Actor Razzie.
Good.
Yes. And I do just want to read off a couple of the taglines for this movie.
Okay.
One is just, "The gang's all here," which is something they push very hard in this movie. It's just nostalgic, all the characters who gamed over the movies are together, and we're
Good.
a family. This one I like quite a bit. "Next summer is lethal." "The faces you love, the action you expect."
See, that's one of my big problems with the movie is it seems to think the reason people like Lethal Weapon is because they like knowing about the rich inner lives of all of the characters.
Well, the funniest thing about this movie is that, yes, there is a lot of banter back and forth between Riggs and Murtaugh about, their lives and what's going on in it.
Yeah.
But they do it at the most inopportune times. They do it while they're getting shot at. They do it while they're about to, face down the bad guy.
Yeah.
While shit's on fire and exploding around them. They decide to talk about their lives.
Yeah, and it serves as exposition for other things that are explained in the actual scenes, like the whole marriage talking through thing that gets explained. That is harped on the entire movie, but it didn't need to, we didn't need this constant reminder about this marriage subplot, just punching us in the face every 10 minutes,
Yeah,
just in
it's
case you
weird.
forgot.
This movie walked on a weird fence because it halfway did its best to kind of keep you updated, if you hadn't seen the movies, and keep you up to speed and explain to you what these characters are all about.
Yeah.
But then it also did so much that you had to have seen the other movies to get.
See, that's what I'm wondering. Is that why I was so confused? I just don't remember enough about these. I know it's referencing them constantly.
Oh, yeah, constantly. This movie is so fucking self-aware.
It was weird, and I was just ugh.
Okay, so we're gonna get into the movie, but I do want to read the last tagline, which
Okay.
is my favorite. I saved the best for last.
Oh, good.
And you know what? It's true, and this is about all this movie can say. "With 4, you get kung fu." Quoted. "With 4, you get kung fu." The number 4.
So it's like the pitch for the movie just got turned into a tagline.
Lethal Weapon, but guess what? We got this Jet Li kid. He does the kicks, he does the punches. You get the kung fu.
Guess what? He's gonna have a fucking rat tail. Boom! We got the kids in. Ugh.
The kids love the rat tails.
The kids love their rat tails. So yeah, let's get into the opening, which would be understandable if you mistook the opening of Lethal Weapon 4 for Spawn.
Yes, a little bit. Yeah, the weirdest thing is that, I don't know, it's just flames, and the title comes up, Lethal Weapon 4, and flames. The flames coming at you, and again, I immediately wrote down, I was like, flamethrower in your face. Lethal Weapon 4, they're not fucking around this time. But they do that because they open the scene with a guy in a homemade armor suit with a flamethrower. It's like a superhero movie.
It's like Nega RoboCop.
Yes.
It is
But
so
he just has a
insane.
welding helmet, and he has,
Yeah.
it looks like he has foam and shit taped to his legs.
It's weird, yeah. He looks robotic, but he's not supposed to be. And
He's
you
fucking blasting a Walkman and listening to rock music while he's flamethrowing the city. and shooting automatic weapons at the city. Not even at people, just at buildings and shit. He's setting palm trees on fire. They never explain who the fuck this guy is or why he's doing it, and then it never gets referenced again.
No, because it sets it up like we just stepped into the middle of Escape from New York or something, and we're just in this dystopia.
It is just their everyday life. Like, this is what happens. They've been together so long. This is how they open the movie. They had to make it crazier than anything else. And they're just like, that they can't just chase killers and rapists all day. No, a fucking flamethrower, man.
They have to
just burning the city for no reason. That's what they deal with on a daily basis now.
Yeah, which is insane, because it's not presented as if that is their everyday life. It's like they act like it is, but at the same time, it's not like the city is in this dire crime spree. It's not like Death Wish 3.
But they don't even mention how fucking weird it is that there's a guy with a flamethrower just setting shit on fire downtown.
Yeah, they act like they're fucking superheroes or something, and this is their daily life fighting evil villains that have come up with these
It's like something out of Last Action Hero.
Yeah.
It is ridiculous. Because again, they're getting shot up, but of course they don't get hit. Nothing bad happens to them. Yeah. Like it is just ridiculous how tongue-in-cheek it is.
They're pretty cool and collected, but at the same time they find time to talk about that Mel Gibson is not married to his girlfriend that happens to be pregnant, which Danny Glover for some reason knows, and Mel Gibson doesn't. And Riggs, Mel Gibson for some reason knows that his daughter is pregnant and not Danny Glover. Like, is this just I guess it's their wives trading information that's doing
pretty much.
This?
Because they kind of show that a little bit later on when Rene Russo reveals that it's Chris Rock's character who knocked up Danny Glover's kid.
And also, I missed that, and so for the longest time, I had no idea that's why Chris Rock was acting so affectionate towards Danny Glover, and I mean, I knew it wasn't the gay thing, but I just thought he was trying to be, like, a good partner or something, and so I didn't get that until they...
And we will get into Chris Rock in this movie, because I have so many questions. I don't know what the fuck he is doing in this movie.
I think he was there for the cell phone scene alone. I think that's what he got hired for.
This weird thing. For one, his character is all over the fucking place. For two, it seems like they try to shoe him, like, some of his stand-up act into it to, like, make him funny and stuff. But it's weird because it's not funny and it's not the kind of material he does.
It's delivered in his cadence, but that's it.
It is, but it's weird because... I don't know, they have him, this opening scene with him, they kind of have him being, like, very distraught and very hurt by the fact that some innocent person got killed. But then every other scene where he's talking about this horrible stuff that's going on, all these people that died, he does it with a fucking smile on his face. And he's, like, almost laughing about it. And then he just becomes a comedian out of nowhere, and he becomes, like, this, like, hard black guy out of nowhere in this one scene with Joe Pesci. And just, like, fucking pointing his gun at him and showing him the badge. And just, like, that is complete 180 from everything we've seen as his character so far.
They are writing this on the set.
It is. It seems like that they try to shoe in his comedy. It seems like they want to make him like a more upscale, like smart, like promising young cop. And then the next scene, he's just like almost like ghetto black guy.
Well, let's try and get more on track, but we will get back to Chris Rock throughout. Actually, honestly, if I'm going to be honest, we're probably going to talk about the first 20 minutes a lot, then kind of skip to the last 20 minutes, because that is about what this movie is worth. Like, the rest of it is so convoluted and stupid. It's a really stupid movie, and not in a good way at all.
And this is the weird thing about it. If you don't have a script in place, and you are going into production a few months before you're supposed to deliver the movie, why would you make it so long? Why would you make it over 2 hours? It's 2 hours and 8 minutes. Why? You could have made this like 90 to 100 minutes, trimmed it down a bit, and gotten it done a lot faster with costing a lot less money.
It's insane where this movie ends up. It's like, I don't know how we got here, why we're here, and... We'll get to how they deal with this.
Yeah. But again, okay, the opening scene...
Yeah, we still haven't got to the opening scene.
So it basically ends with the flamethrower guy kind of becoming the Rocketeer briefly and kind of going into a gas truck. Huge explosion. Everything blows up. I'm like, okay, that's where a lot of the money is going for those kind of effects. And it's just blowing shit up for the sake of having explosions.
Yeah. And the weird thing is, the very next scene, they do almost the same exact thing. They do a big opening set piece for the very next scene. So I wonder if this opening scene was filmed after the fact. And they're like, we need to introduce this some other way to get the crowd on our side immediately.
That does make sense. And so they just put the most big, ridiculous action scene you can think of that makes no fucking sense.
No sense.
That is never referenced again and is never explained in any way, shape, or form.
Yeah.
And they put it in the front of the movie because they do that. They have that scene, and then they move to another scene, which just as easily could have been the opening.
The only way it's referenced
It just would have been a quieter opening.
Yeah, the only way it's referenced is with that newspaper article they keep taping to the door. So that's the only reason I think it had to have been there, but it makes more sense if that was an afterthought. Because it does not make sense that this is what you want to do with your movie. You go from that to Joe Pesci they're on a boat with Joe Pesci. Joe Pesci honestly should not be there. And they have a shark on the boat. We don't know how.
I read originally that Joe Pesci wasn't going to be in the film.
Yeah.
But then he worked out some kind of deal, or Richard Donner wanted him to be in the film. So he wasn't originally written into it, and he was just added in.
They tried to make this film a comedy. That is the strangest thing about it.
Yeah.
Is that...
Well, that's the thing. All the others, they were more straight-up action movies that just found moments of comedy with the characters that you kind of grew to love.
Yeah.
But there were definitely very sincerely funny moments in the Lethal Weapon movies.
No, exactly. But
they weren't trying for a comedy. They were trying for like a buddy cop action movie.
Yeah, this is almost like... I can't remember. I want to say Rush Hour was after this, but this is almost like a precursor to Rush Hour.
I think they came out the same year, actually.
I mean, I guess there's a long history of this. Like, I'm kind of Beverly Hills Cop, not like this is pushing the comedy so far up front.
Yeah.
Like they're saying that is what you are at a Lethal Weapon movie for. The action's kind of secondary, and
well, see, and that's the thing is that the action in this movie is actually pretty good.
We were having an absolute ball for the first 20 minutes.
The first 20, 30 minutes when it was just like those two opening action pieces, they were great. Like, that's why I want to watch a Lethal Weapon movie.
Yeah.
They had good action scenes, but then they just try to overplay the comedy. They tried to play with the nostalgic factor for the characters. And it went off the fucking rails.
Oh, it went so far off the rails. But I do want to talk...
It got to the point where... nothing was happening in the middle, and I was like, man, I know I was making fun of all the explosions earlier, but I missed the explosions.
Yeah, I know, please, add more in. But I do want to talk about the second action piece, because it's so strange. Because for one, we've already gone over the whole marriage thing, that Mel Gibson's kind of aloof about marrying his pregnant girlfriend. And then they do this all over again when they're on the boat, and they act like Joe Pesci is just not in the film anymore for a while. Like, he just kind of disappears for about 3 minutes until he pops up, does some quips, and then they go straight back into talking about serious stuff while they're up on another level than Joe Pesci on the boat. And then
they are in numerous ways.
Yes. And then, after all this, there is a boat that apparently... That boat did not see them sitting there in the water, and they had no inclination this boat was getting anywhere close to them.
See, and you brought up a point I didn't realize. I wasn't sure if they were supposed to be there on, like, a stakeout, or if they were... I think they were just on a fishing trip.
Yeah, they were just fishing.
And that boat just happened to come right past them and, like, almost hit them, so they weren't paying attention.
Yeah, and they almost immediately are like, we need to hijack this boat. And... like, because they thought they heard gunshots. And, I mean, it was gunshots, but it could have been fucking anything. Boats make a lot of fucking noise.
Yeah.
And they start shooting people. They set the boat on fire almost immediately.
Yeah.
It's just like, these could just be fishermen. Like, what are you guys doing?
Yeah, it's definitely ridiculous. And this movie came so close to literally jumping the shark. There is a shark. Joe Pesci kind of stumbles over it. He doesn't quite jump, but they pretty much did.
They got close.
Which, again, like, it's not connected to the original opening scene at all, so I don't know. It is like a whole nother opening action set piece. But again, it's just silly with the shark.
And then, like, a barrel explodes and comes and crashes on Danny Glover's boat, and there's
while sexy saxophone music plays.
This movie is full of sexy saxophone at every moment.
Okay, here's the score in this movie is ridiculous. I've seen all the other Lethal Weapons. I get that that's kind of a thing, like kind of the sexy saxophone music.
Yeah.
But that's usually like transitioning scenes or like sad scenes, like where Mel Gibson is sitting there thinking about his dead wife. There's kind of stuff is playing.
Play it.
Yeah, when it's kind of doing like city views and things like that.
Yeah.
It pops up in the most ridiculous and uncomfortable places in this movie. Anytime that there should not be sexy saxophone music or sexy steel guitar music, that's where they put it.
Yeah,
I kind of feel like they did the score and it would have been perfect, but for some reason when they were editing the movie, someone just like shifted it about 2 minutes off from what it was supposed to be. So it just played completely wrong the entire time and nobody noticed it.
No, it's insane because they'll make like comedy quips and it's followed by sexy sax. You're like, what is happening here? Like this is
or even like there's talk of like a slave trade and racism, and then cut away to sexy saxophone music.
I really don't think you understand what you're doing here. Like, I don't think you understand what you're kind of giving the audience at this moment. Extremely strange. And once again, there's after all this, where they fuck up this boat, kill all these people, and then they find a bunch of what were gonna be slaves underneath, and then we get this really weird scene with Chris Rock being extremely upset over one of the dead bad guys. I think.
No.
Was it a? I mean, but who knows who's a bad guy? They just started shooting these people out of nowhere, so we have no idea. And
I think it was maybe one of like the people they were hiding, or it was maybe some innocent bystander or something.
Yeah, and so it gets into this weird talk about slavery and killing and crime.
And I know they were trying to make it serious, but they kind of negate that immediately because the way it is they kind of talk about how they were going to be treating these people, how they were going to be paying for them and everything. Yeah. And Danny Glover just has lines like slaves. And then he kind of looks off to the side longingly, and then sexy saxophone music comes on.
Oh my god, it was so insane.
Yeah, but that's where we first meet Chris Rock. And late 90s Chris Rock was trying so hard. Yeah. He really was. He was trying to like be an action guy, to be funny in this movie. He was trying to make a movie career for himself.
He did all right for himself in the end, but not
Except
here.
Not
in this movie. He did not do anything good in this movie.
Yeah. I actually thought he did okay action-wise, like towards the end shootout scene and stuff in the warehouse.
He was better than I thought he would have been.
He actually did pretty good in the action stuff, but the comedy was just fucking flat.
Really, they kind of mishandled him. Like, Chris Rock easily could have been like the next Eddie Murphy and just kind of jumped into those shoes. I mean, I know that's a weird thing to say. It's kind of
it could have been as far as like the stand-up to and Saturday Night Live to the transition to movies.
To do action. I mean, once again, talking about Beverly Hills Cop and just kind of jump into a little bit of an action skin. Like, he deserved better than Lethal Weapon 4 for his action opening. I think he could have carried a movie by himself.
Actually, I don't think he did too much more action. I think the only other action film I can think of, he did a movie called Bad Company with, I think, Anthony Hopkins.
Yeah.
Which we should put on the table because
totally.
I never saw it, and I'm surprised I remembered the name of that.
That's a good callback. I would have never thought of that.
But other than that, he's mostly just done comedy stuff, and most of those have been kind of bad as well.
He did. I mean, I love his documentary, Black Hair or whatever. Or Hair. Is it Black Hair?
Something like that.
Yeah, but that's an awesome documentary. It's great.
Oh, yeah, definitely. But even some of his comedies, even though they aren't great and some of them are kind of stupid, he is likable enough to where I will watch him in that.
But he does have a very specific shtick. But once again, so does Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
Like,
but again, you can play to that because the same year, I believe, he was in Dogma, and that played much more to his comic sensibility. Yeah. And it worked for him as opposed to what they did here.
Yeah, he had the action chops. He deserved better than... Like you said, it did well, but it just did not. It didn't.
But not
play
that
him
well. Like it definitely made its money back and stuff. But if it wasn't released overseas, if it was just here, it would have lost money.
Yeah.
And it definitely wasn't a huge. Even though it was like one of the top grossing films of the year, I think. Yeah. Probably in the top 10 or something. It still was barely a hit.
Which brings up another interesting point of how do you pitch a Lethal Weapon 4? Like, who's like, this will make money? Because this was even before really like the whole sequelization of movies came about. Like, this is right on the cusp of that.
Been sequels and stuff, especially to stuff like action and horror fare. But the thing is like, I don't know how the fuck it jumped so high. I don't know if it's just because people's salaries went up so much. Because it had been 6 years since Lethal Weapon 3. Lethal Weapon 3, I think, was made for like $35 million. Yeah, and they jumped up to a total budget of like $140.
Who? That's what, I mean. I guess that's more of my question is who was able to argue that Lethal Weapon 4 is going to be the summer blockbuster hit we've all been waiting for. Like, I can't imagine that pitch meeting and someone saying, I am willing to put $100 million into this idea.
And I don't know, because it's very half and half. It's half like a watered down, nostalgic, trying to be too much of a comedy film, but the other half of it actually is a Lethal Weapon movie. Like, the action scenes and some of the character moments, like, are really Lethal Weapon stuff.
No, they have, like, there's a Lethal Weapon movie kind of dying inside of this movie.
And again, this is also another interesting point in time, because this is kind of the end of Mel Gibson movie star.
Well,
this is where I mean, it took a few more years for that to really go.
Well, look, he had to go off the deep end. He didn't his movie starness didn't kill him. His anti-Semitism killed his career.
No, exactly. But I think that's also part of it, because you can even tell. Because the character of Riggs in the other movies, there is some comedy to him. He can be funny at times, but he was mostly just a badass. Here, he's a fucking goofball.
Yes.
And I think even just his delivery and stuff, he's so fucking cocksure. He's kind of like a douchebag. And I think I think it's hubris. Like, I think he just got too full of himself, and he's just like, I'm fucking Mel Gibson movie star, and I'm kooky. And then that ended up coming back to bite him in the ass when he thought he was infallible, and he thought, I'm fucking Mel Gibson, and then his true side came out in a couple of ways.
But also, this is also the end of an era where we had, like, good guys that were human and could be hurt, and that's what Mel Gibson plays best, is being the hurt. Like, a Payback is the great example of him just being just like beat the shit up, but just playing it so well.
And he even does that here.
And
but
exactly,
it's weird because like the ending scenes with that, they're played perfectly. They get hurt, like they're older too, and they can't do as well as they once did.
Yeah.
But then there's still shit like that opening scene with flamethrowers and them getting shot at with automatic weapons,
where they're doing fine.
Everyone's fine. Danny Glover ended up walking like a chicken in his underwear in front of a guy with a flamethrower who shot it at him. Didn't even get touched.
Yeah, that's the weird thing, is that they kind of have both. But at the end, they finally get back to what made Lethal Weapon and Die Hard, these movies, wonderful, is that it's a human character trying to go through these travails.
Yeah, and I will say one of my favorite scenes in the movie is towards the end. And even though there is a little bit of that stupid back and forth, like this isn't the time to talk about personal business, but they're doing that on the dock while Jet Li is mourning his dead brother. Yeah. And they just kind of like look at each other as like, all right, fuck, let's do this. And they slowly start, like, that is a badass scene. And then it was a good fucking fight scene.
But I couldn't remember. Isn't that a callback where they're like, well, yeah, we need to go ask them? I thought that was a callback to the first one.
Yeah.
Okay, just making sure.
Yeah, that line, there's a lot of little things like that. Yeah. I will also say that I think Jet Li is one of the best parts of this movie.
Yeah.
I think he was a great addition. And again, the tagline's right. You get Kung Fu.
It's Lethal Weapon 4 with Kung Fu.
Exactly, and that was a very good villain for them to fight against, because he's so fucking good at fighting, and he's so fast and has so many good moves that, like, when they do finally fight him at the end, they have to work together, and just the way they fight him, and the way they have to, like, he's coming to kick both of them in the face, so they both grab a leg and then have to take him down.
Yeah, but like, once again, they're so superhuman up to that moment that it doesn't play as well as it should. Like, that's just a scene from a better...
like, everybody's arms, though. Jet Li is forever breaking people's arms. Because that's the thing, we even watch some of those Mad TV parody things, and they even do like the whole broken arm and him having to put it back. And this happens in this movie.
the dislocated shoulder.
Yeah, exactly. But I think he does it to like one of Danny Glover's arms. I think he does it to both of Mel Gibson's arms, and he has to like knock both of them back in.
I can't remember. But
there was a lot of bone-breaking noises going on.
And so we got to the end of the boat scene. After this is where it kind of starts devolving into banter, an unintelligible banter, because they're stepping on each other's lines, they're talking really fast, and they're talking about nothing. And so there's really, you don't know what to focus in on, and then there's this at least 10-minute long scene where they are walking from place to place within the police station, and they get promoted to officer, then they go find out about these Chinese people, then they go talk to Chris Rock again, and then Mel Gibson has a scene with his psychologist. Like,
okay, well, here's the thing. You know how you were saying that opening scene might have been added in after the fact?
Yeah.
That scene very well could have been added in after the fact as well.
That's true.
Because it is just kind of in one continuous location, and the main gag in that is the fact that he keeps putting up the newspaper clipping of Roger in his underwear from the opening scene.
That's true. They could easily have cut that in. And
yeah, exactly. Because other than that, it's not really mentioned that they got promoted, because they don't act like they got promoted. The whole promotion thing was like, oh, you're getting promoted to captain because we can't afford the insurance anymore. You guys have to stop blowing everything up and fucking causing damage. Yet they immediately go out and cause damage. And
no one says anything to them.
Yeah, and no one says anything about them being captains until like the end scene, which also seems like it was made
you're
at the very
demoted
end.
back to sergeant.
Exactly.
And like, what?
Yeah,
why?
so it was all... yeah, exactly. It was ridiculous, but I do think maybe those were added in after the fact once they decided to do a new opening scene.
I could see that. I could
Because
see
that's all it
see
is.
that whole end scene added in.
And that's
just
the thing. There's the end scene definitely. They were just like, because they didn't have an ending when they started filming, and they were just like, this is
we have to wrap this
photo
up
album.
somehow. We have to wrap up this marriage subplot we brought up for some goddamn reason.
Yeah, no, and there's so many ridiculous little fucking subplots, like the whole thing about Murtaugh's wife being like a trashy erotic fiction writer.
So he has more money than
So he
usual,
has more money, and people thought that he was on the take or something. There's that. There's fucking Jet Li getting the triad heads out of jail, which, again, it kind of led to the end shootout warehouse scene before the actual end scene.
But there's so many other ways to get that to happen.
There are, and it's pretty much just like they explain it at the last minute, and then they go into the warehouse, and then they're just like, phony money. Okay, like... But yeah, and then the ending with them having to get married and have the baby, and this movie just wouldn't end.
There's like I said, there's a lot of stuff in between that there's no use to talk about.
There really isn't. I have like 5 pages of notes.
I just started tuning out because I was like, this is unintelligible. I am getting exhausted trying to keep up with it. They're jumping for
most of it is made up because there are all of the action set pieces in this film are pretty good. Some better than others, but in between that, there's just a lot of meandering and trying to be funny that just doesn't work.
There is this whole dentist office scene that is beyond ridiculous. And you could tell it's all improv, and it will not fucking end.
Yeah, it's pretty much they're trying to get information out of somebody, so they go to the dentist office, and they kind of like...
They pump him full of nitrous, and then they keep the thing open.
Which is the stupidest fucking thing, because the entire time, there's the sound effect of the nitrous coming out. So they give him a little bit, and they pump it all the way up, but instead of like turning it off, they just leave it on. They can hear it. And then they all start laughing hysterically and like revealing information that the other one wasn't supposed to know.
That's actually where I was revealed that Chris Rock is the father.
But they're just laughing hysterically and then just like saying stupid shit, and it's not funny. And then immediately, like 2 seconds later, as soon as like they're done with that, they're like, "Oh, okay, I get it now. Fuck you."
And there's also this. So the bad guys. There's this whole action scene inside Danny Glover's house, where the bad guys stole these slaves he had taken. Whatever.
Well, okay, so here's the thing. There's a difference. There were the people stowed away in the big boat. Those are people that were going to be slaves. They were going to sell those people. Yeah. The people that stowed away on the lifeboat that Danny Glover took to his house, that was a specific family that wasn't going to be slaves. They were brought in by the guy forging the money. That's his family. They brought him over. They were going to let them live, like get them green cards and let them live in America if he helped them. With counterfeiting the money.
Didn't get that. Didn't catch it.
Well, that's what I'm here for.
It should have been 80 yard in.
I wrote my thesis on Lethal Weapon 4.
So, there's this whole action scene where they got this family, blah, blah, blah. Not Bruce Lee. Jet Li ends up burning their house. Like, they set the house on fire, their whole gang, and they end up escaping.
It's one of those stupid action movie conceits where they're like, okay, we're going to set your house on fire, and then we're just going to leave you here tied up, hoping that you don't escape, which of course you're going to escape.
Yeah, because it generally happens in these type of situations. But yeah, and so they chase 2 of the guys that they can find, which there's apparently a helicopter in the sky that can immediately find the 2 cars they just talked about in the middle of LA. Yeah. We have no idea where this helicopter is, but apparently they were right fucking next to them. Ridiculous. But at the same time, we had this huge action set piece, really the weakest of the action set pieces, and ironically, it's the one I remembered most.
It is also the one I remembered most. Yeah. Because again, I was blown away by that first one. I forgot about Flamethrower Guy completely. Yeah. I remembered like the getting naked and the chicken thing.
I did,
but I didn't remember Flamethrower Guy. And even like the boat scene, I didn't remember hardly anything of that. I remember this one where they're chasing after the people, and for some reason they just had to have like a half-built house on a truck.
Yes.
That they have a fight in, and then Mel Gibson ends up like kind of being dragged behind this truck while on a table holding on to like a plastic cover.
And then he gets back in the car with Danny Glover so that they can go off in a building off-ramp to sail into a building and drive through it until they can drive back onto the highway, and then the back shot, the building mysteriously disappears.
Yeah.
It was like...
No, the whole thing was ridiculous, but that's how it plays out. And also in this scene, I noticed Mel Gibson's stunt double so much, it was distracting. Like, every other shot, like, there was way more scenes of his stunt double in there than there was of him. And like, every time, and he's not even, like, hiding his face very well or anything, and then it'll just cut to a random shot that you can tell just doesn't fit in of Mel Gibson, like...
I mean, and I think that's just Richard Donner doesn't know how to do extremely big action set pieces, because that's not what Lethal Weapon really was.
Well,
up to
there
that
are
point. I mean, there
good
are
ones and some that work, but again, like the ones in the beginning where action happens, but they don't have to be like, you know, speeding through the street on a fucking table on the highway, like to where it can actually be the actors. I don't think he knows as well how to use like the stunt doubles in those big actions, or at least not. It might not even be him. It might be more the editor of the film.
Yeah, it could. I mean, it was.
It was distracting. It was the weakest one of the set pieces, but I remember that because something like, you know,
I think it was also the biggest one pushed in the commercials.
Oh yeah, and also, you know, someone kind of skating on a table on the highway while holding on to, like, being dragged behind by a truck.
Yeah, that's a weird
memorable.
one. Yeah, that's extremely weird for an action movie, and so yeah, that is memorable. But and that was probably the best part of it, and it still wasn't that great. And then it just keeps. Like the rest of this movie, it just keeps going.
Oh yeah, and then like you kind of mentioned, he gets back in the car with them, and then they're chasing. They get separated. They end up going off of a bridge, driving into a building. They just happen to land perfectly on a floor to where they can just go through a window. They drive all the way through because fuck the value of human life. Who knows how many people they could kill? But apparently they don't because they aren't bad guys. Yeah. And then they drive back out of a window. They kind of fly over a window washer's cart, and then they somehow just happen to land back on a bridge.
It's like the highway curved to suit this building, and they just happen to be able to drive through it.
But I will say, I do appreciate that they at least like didn't make the car okay after that happened. Like, as soon as that happened, all the tires blew out. Yeah. They were riding on their rims and shit.
That's true.
Like that was at least kind of cool. But they pretty much, like, the whole scene is fucking pointless because all this happens, and their car is pretty much unable to keep driving, and they can't keep up. So the guy gets away from them, and as soon as he like passes a corner, he gets hit by a big fucking truck.
Yeah, so both the people that they were looking for, because the first guy gets hit by a bus, which is awesome.
Oh yeah, the guy he was fighting with on the truck.
Yeah.
I did really enjoy that. That was a really cool practical effect.
That was.
But yeah, they just had the guy, he falls off the truck. A bus is coming towards him, and then it just shows, and it is like almost like a trauma kind of effect.
It really
where
was,
it looks like a body, and they filled it full of like watermelon and like just red goo, and then had him get hit by the bus.
Oh, it was awesome, and yeah, so both people are dead. So zero-sum game. It was just
an
nothing
excuse to have a big action set piece.
Yeah, because it had been really boring up to
That's what happens when you make a movie without having a decent script in place.
And so then we go to China.
Yeah, it's basically the way the scene plays out after the whole, you know, their house gets burned down thing.
I think the China thing may have happened earlier, but who knows?
Yeah.
Who cares about the order anymore?
I don't know. It's ridiculous. All I know is that, like, there's this weird bonding scene between, like, Danny Glover's character and the grandpa character out of the family that they took in. Mm-hmm. And they kind of like, he gives them
sexy
his
sax while they're drinking.
Music, they're drinking, they're kind of staring at each other, they look a little like glassy eyed. Like, there's a sexy grandpa bonding moment to sexy music, and the music seems like it's trying to convey that they're in love.
Yeah, it really does.
But then it cuts to that. To like a prison break scene, but not prison break, but they're a prison scene.
Yeah.
But it still kind of has the sexy music, so it's like a sexy prison break.
It's the strange. It reminded me a lot of Air Force One, where they kind of cut to Russia, and the Russian prison are like, I know we're kind of dealing with Russia, but why are we here all of a sudden?
Well, again, and it isn't explained immediately, but it really
Air Force
just
One
felt
explained
like,
it a lot better.
I thought your file might have fucked up, and I thought maybe a different movie started without us realizing.
Yeah, it could, I would not have been surprised.
Well, that's the thing. Throughout the movie, it does meander and just goes on, and they keep building all these little things.
They're not putting together in any way.
But the funny thing about it is they put all these little things together and have these scenes that kind of work into the plot, and then they just explain everything within a 3-minute scene of them driving a car over a bridge, and it's all 80-yard lines.
Yeah, we're not looking at anybody talking. We were watching a car cross a bridge and listening to them explain the plot to us up to this point.
Yeah, exactly. It's fucking Riggs and Murtaugh and Chris Rock's character, and they're just like literally not even seeming like they're in a conversation. They're just saying like, "Oh, so this is happening," and then someone's like, "Oh, because this is happening," and this is why they're doing that. They're counterfeiting money, and they tried to trade his family for him to do the counterfeit money. We're gonna go show him that the money is counterfeit and ruin their deal.
And this is this is literally happening on the way to the last set piece.
Yeah,
like, this
on
is
the way to the finale.
Yeah, we are explained the movie on the way to the finale.
And again, it is a completely 80 yards. We don't see anyone. It's just like a random shot of a car that I don't even know if it's a car they're driving in the next scene.
Who knows?
Exactly. And they're just 80 yarding all these lines. So I'm like, did they forget to tell you what the plot was throughout the movie? So they just had to add that in to explain it?
Yeah, because I think they just had... like, once again, since they didn't have a script, I wonder, like... It's like they got this... They had this screenplay, but not a script. And so they decided, instead of cutting down on the screenplay to help cater to that, they kept the entire screenplay and tried to work around the fact that they didn't know how to get these pieces together.
They didn't know how to get from point A to point B, so they just kind of like let them figure it out.
Yeah.
Let them improv their way through the movie.
I would not have...
I will say, as far as the whole improv thing goes, I am making a statement. I don't know why this didn't happen in 1998. And I think you really took something special away from us, because I believe that Chris Rock and Joe Pesci could have been the greatest comedy duo to ever live.
That's what I'm saying. They should have had a movie. It should have just been not Lethal Weapon 4 and just been Joe Pesci and Chris Rock show. It would have been fucking amazing.
But they have this back and forth where they're just like a few back and forths, but one where they're talking about cell phones, which really isn't funny, but just them.
But they have good banter.
They do, and them going back and forth, like, it's funny even though the dialogue is not. And they have a scene where Chris Rock is kind of threatening Joe Pesci, and Joe Pesci is trying not to come off as racist. Yeah, it is hilarious, and I think like they could have done a really good buddy cop movie.
Yeah, they could have. That would have been awesome. And I didn't realize this till the final scene, but Joe Pesci, he has decided to become a private eye, and he slowly turns into a stereotypical private eye over the course of the film. We'll get to that in the final scene, but let's go back a little bit. And yeah, like the cell phone banter. And what's surprising is there's so much banter in this movie, and it's not well done. Like I said before, it's just people stomping on each other's lines, and they're acting like that's presenting a sort of naturalism to it, and it's not. It's like an improv.
Because that's the thing, because you can look at any character in a given scene like that, and everyone is just doing their own thing, so none of it's really getting across. If you look at Gibson's being goofy and trying to make jokes. If you look at Danny Glover's being like the stern, like, oh, I can't believe I'm dealing with this shit guy.
Yeah.
Joe Pesci is just keeps saying whatever and putting his hands
just
in
doing
people's
whatever
faces.
the fuck he's doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe Pesci is all over the place in this movie, and I've never been so disappointed in him. He is so much better than this movie.
He is. And, you know, I'm sorry. I'm just thinking about Joe Pesci.
Do you need to take a minute?
Yeah. I'm sorry. I'm just thinking, like, how much I enjoyed him in The Super more than I enjoyed this. Like, I was just thinking, I was like, man, I kind of wish we watched The Super instead of Lethal Weapon 4.
Yeah.
Now there's a fucking movie.
The fucking Super? No, that's a fucking movie.
It's about a guy. He gets a building. He has to be the super. He has to fix things. He doesn't know how to fix things. He's Joe Pesci.
Joe Pesci don't know how to fix things. Oh, but no, instead we're still going to talk about Lethal Weapon 4 because we have to finish this movie.
I'm trying as hard as I can to get us away from Lethal. I will talk about any fucking movie other than Lethal Weapon 4 right now.
We'll get to the last set piece, which is they do the most insane thing I've ever seen a cop duo try to do, which is drive into the middle of a gang, like
a gang dealing,
a high tension deal.
Yeah, basically the deal that's happening is that Jet Li's character is paying like millions and millions of
counterfeit
money to I guess like
China gang, whatever.
Well, yeah, to a gang, I guess, or
maybe the government. Who knows?
Maybe the government. Yeah, no, it was like a senator or something like that. I don't know, someone in power, in order to get the triad heads of like 4 different families out of jail.
Yeah.
So what they do is that they just, after telling us exactly what the plot is in the last 80-yard scene, they drive into the warehouse where they are, honking their fucking horn, and just being like, "Hey guys!"
Yeah, getting out of their car like, "What's up? We're here now."
And I don't know why no one seemed to have a gun in that scene or a gun drawn on them as they came in and proclaimed that they're cops.
You would think when they first started honking their horns, everyone would draw their guns and probably shoot them.
Or at least when they get out of the car and they're like, "Hey, LAPD."
Yeah, they're just like, "Oh, well, what the fuck are you doing here? You're outgunned." Like,
but yeah, their big plan is to go in there and be like, "Hey, the money's counterfeit." And then everyone else starts shooting at each other and they just try to get out of the way.
Yeah, and it works, so who knows?
I mean, it's an exciting scene, and I will say that I mean
better,
it is, but it leads to a much better action scene.
Yeah,
because the final fight between Murtaugh and Riggs and Jet Li is fucking awesome.
Oh, it's awesome, yeah.
Until it goes way too long. Because basically, it's a cool
once again
scene.
Won't quit.
Exactly. The two of them face off against Jet Li. There's an awesome fight scene.
It's all done with like rain and shit.
Yeah,
and it looks beautiful.
It looks beautiful,
great.
and the fight choreography is great. They look like they're getting the shit beat out of them.
Yeah.
They look really hurt, but they prevail. They get through it.
Yeah.
And it ends up with like Jet Li and Mel Gibson in the water fighting after Danny Glover like stabs him with a metal spear.
Well, see, the thing is, you would think that scene ends when Mel Gibson picks up Jet Li and he's like, and throws him over the edge. Like, he picks him up by the spike in his stomach.
They both go into the water.
Yeah, they both go over the edge, and so it just keeps going, and you're like, well, he should have just thrown him, and that would have been good.
And but he's not going to die like that, apparently.
Yeah.
So they go into the water together, and even going all the way down, I guess there's like no, it's a car from earlier.
The
car
that had blown up and fallen down.
Yeah, exactly. Which I think that car. No, there was a car in this movie that blew up twice. I had an explosion counter.
Well, we can go back to that. Let's finish this scene out.
Anyway, but yeah, it ends up with Mel Gibson finding like an automatic weapon that was in the car.
Well, it's an AK. And AKs can shoot underwater, or else I would have called bullshit.
That was what I was wondering.
Yeah.
I figured that could shoot underwater, but I wasn't completely
Only
sure.
AK-47s were designed to shoot underwater, or to be able to shoot when submerged. I think it can only stand so much. I'm not sure if complete submersion is something they can do.
Yeah.
So, but
and also it probably would lose its capabilities over time.
Well, yeah, exactly. It would rust and things like that. But it can shoot underwater.
Okay.
That is a function of AK-47s.
Because that's something I wasn't sure about, but I was able to give it to the movie because I just wanted to be done with it.
No, that's that
so
was
that's what
researched.
He does. He ends up shooting Jet Li with an AK, and one of the funniest scenes to me in that scene is right before Mel Gibson shoots him with the AK, Jet Li looks at him and just like shakes his head, no, don't shoot me. I was just joshing you.
Please, can we talk about this?
Yeah, the most ridiculous thing. So that happens, and then he swims back up to the top. He starts climbing on like
this pylon had broken off.
Exactly. He was climbing up it to get back while Danny Glover's knocked out, and then it breaks off.
It breaks again, and then and it's just at that point it's like, why won't you stop?
It keeps going, and it pretty much like he gets sunk to the bottom with that on top of him.
I think
Danny Glover has to wake up and then scream at him, waiting for an answer for like 5 minutes, and then he dives in and saves him. And I believe originally Mel Gibson wanted Riggs to die at the end of this movie. Like kind of like how Harrison Ford wanted Han Solo to die at the end of Return of the Jedi. Like he just wanted it to be it.
Yeah.
So I kind of see like maybe that scene was supposed to end originally with him dying, but they of course decided to go with a more happy ending.
He somehow lifts fucking 1,000-pound piece of concrete,
and Mel Gibson somehow holds his breath for like 5 minutes while down there.
Speaking of, how sad is it that Harrison Ford hurt his foot?
It's his ankle. He broke it completely.
But that's so sad.
Yeah. Well, that's the thing, because I'm sure like he wasn't super stoked about coming back for it.
Exactly.
But I'm sure the paycheck was good enough. And now the fact that he fucking hurt himself that bad in the Millennium Falcon, it was like a hatch of the Millennium Falcon fell and broke it.
Oh,
because they actually built a Millennium Falcon to do it. It's fucking sad, but I'm sure he's super fucking pissed and grumpy about it.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure he'll come back and finish it, but he's not going to be happy about it, and I doubt he's going to be in anything past 7.
No, he is. I would imagine he is definitely done after this. But man, he came back for this last one, and now the rest of his life is fucked.
And I bet J.J. Abrams feels like a dick. Because he went through this big deal and even, like, was teasing it and being so happy, like, we built the fucking Millennium Falcon.
Yeah.
And then it fucking broke Harrison Ford's ankle.
Oh, it's so shitty.
Why do we want so much to just not talk about Lethal Weapon 4?
that was my overall goal. So there is a scene where a car blows up twice.
Yes.
It's amazing.
And this is a scene that gets played twice in the movie. There's the first one where a U.S. government official that takes a bribe in order to, like, smuggle people over. He basically, a car comes up behind him when he's waiting at a train tracks, counting his fucking money and twirling his mustache, pretty much. And it pushes him into the train tracks, and he's, like, trying to go in reverse instead of just driving forward out of the way of the train tracks.
I mean, to a certain extent, you're kind of panicking, but then again, that scene plays for, like, 10 seconds before the train gets there.
Yeah, there's a good amount of time. So it plays again with fucking Rene Russo and Mel Gibson in a car with Anyang, the little Asian boy that saves the day.
Asian boy for no reason.
Yeah.
Whatever.
To be a cute Asian boy. But they do that, and of course, Mel Gibson's actually smart enough to drive out of the way. He drives forward, so the car goes onto the train tracks just in time to get hit by the train. It gets hit by the train and explodes. And I think this was the 6th explosion in the movie. I had an explosion counter. There's 7 explosions and 1 fire. This was 6. Then I don't even know what the fuck happens, but the car ends up in front of the train again somehow.
It's in front of another train.
Oh yeah, it gets hit by
way.
one train and explodes and gets on another track. Then it gets hit by another train and it explodes again.
There's 2 tanks of gasoline or something on each
and
side.
Every explosion in this movie is ridiculous. Like, other than the gas truck one in the beginning, cars just explode for no fucking reason. It's like, all it takes is a car gets hit by something and it fucking explodes.
Yeah. And so remember we were talking about the end of the movie, or the end of the final set piece? Guess what? There's another 20 minutes to this movie.
not quite 20, but yeah, there is a lot.
Close.
You pretty much, it ends perfectly. It could have ended, or you could have had a small tag scene.
It could have had like a marriage while the girl was pregnant with Murdoch there, like as his best man. That would have been cool.
Exactly.
That would have been good.
A final scene, like just a fucking wedding scene or something. That would have been fine. Instead, they give us 2 more scenes.
Yeah.
First scene, they cut to Mel Gibson going to his dead wife's grave and talking to her. And in one of either the most brilliant or most retarded scenes in cinematic history. Okay, so Mel Gibson is talking to his dead wife about wanting to marry Rene Russo. And
how he feels bad about it.
Yeah, he feels bad about it. He kind of wants her permission. And then Joe Pesci comes up because he was tailing him because he's a private investigator.
He's in like fucking tan overcoat, like fedora mode right now. Like he is full private investigator.
Oh yeah,
fucking stereotype. It's awesome.
And I don't know why the fuck this is here.
It's so confusing.
He just comes up to him and he's like, "Oh, I'm sorry. You want to be left alone. I was here hiding behind a tree watching you for some reason. So I'll go." And he's like, "Wait, before I go, let me tell you a sad story." And he tells a story about how he had a pet frog when he was a kid.
Named Froggy, because he's very unoriginal.
By the way, I called this story the Froggy Conundrum. But yeah, he was a kid, he didn't have any friends, he didn't have his parents or anything. Froggy was his best friend, and he talked about it like it was a him. But he thought he used to kiss it because he thought if he kissed it, it would become a princess.
And then it would be his mother.
Yeah. So that opens up all kinds of issues about Leo's character that we need a whole standalone movie to dive into.
He just needs his own spin-off just to deal with whatever just happened.
And I feel that story is completely ad-libbed, and I think that speaks fucking rivers and mountains into the psyche of Joe Pesci.
It's because the moral of the story is that was his only friend until he met Riggs and Murdoch, and
which means that from when he was a small child and had a frog
Yeah.
for like 40 fucking years,
he did not have a single fucking friend.
Single friend.
Until he met two people that kind of don't like him.
yeah, that treat him like shit
Yeah.
and belittle him at every different moment they can. I mean, I guess they are they're friends,
friendly-ish
but
with
they
it.
treat him like shit.
Yeah, no, he's like the little brother of the group. And
Yeah, exactly. But he also has a beautiful line towards the end of this, and he was like, you know, it made me realize, like, you guys aren't better than Froggy. You're just different.
which just makes that whole speech null and void, and it also it gives the movie the air that the takeaway message is about to be that Joe Pesci got friends, and you're just like,
But wait, there's more.
yeah, but there's more.
We have a whole nother like 10-minute scene to play out, and I don't fucking understand it. Okay, so basically we cut to Rene Russo having their child in the hospital.
Because Mel Gibson gets a page at the cemetery, and Joe Pesci's like, well, I'll drive you.
Yeah, because he needs to be in the scene.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, so they go to the hospital, and basically Rene Russo refuses to have the baby, which he can't stop from happening until they get married.
Yeah, because
Which,
we have
not
to
even
wrap
like
up
really
this.
married. They're just like, oh, well, I guess yeah. They don't want to do a wedding scene. They want to have her have the baby, so they're like, oh, we got to get them married first. But you know, it's all about hearing the words. So Joe Pesci goes and finds a fucking rabbi.
This is my favorite part because it's so differently colored 10 years later when 16 years later when Mel Gibson has gone full anti-Semitic, and you're just like, oh shit, it just paints the scene in such a different color.
A little bit, because yeah, the rabbi comes up, is like, are you guys even Jewish? And he's like, not necessarily.
Yeah, I'm just like, I wonder if this was all Mel Gibson's idea. He's like, no, they want to get married, but they can only find a rabbi.
Yeah, get
hilarious.
it? 'Cause
Jews. Because they're Jews and they're not. Because they're not.
It's ridiculous, and obviously it's not a real wedding.
Yeah, I mean, because come on, they're not the rats of the earth like the Jews. Come on.
You have an awesome Mel Gibson impression.
Thanks.
So, all Jews aside,
I want to do that because I want to talk about the rabbi. Once again, it's a bunch of banter of everybody stepping on each other's lines. Nothing is getting accomplished. Nothing is funny.
Yeah, nothing is funny, and nothing. Yeah, exactly. Nothing is finalized by this because he doesn't even go through the whole ceremony. He's like, "Hey, do you, etc., etc. Hey, do you, etc., etc."
Yeah, he starts speaking in Yiddish. Like, what am I doing? You're not even Jewish. And just once again, I think Mel Gibson was all over this happening.
And again, and the way the scene kind of ends before it goes into the next
this is what I wanted
scene.
to cover.
It was the pea cup.
Yes, the Joe Pesci. He's just like, no, wait, because he's a German Jew, which I don't think he is.
No, well, his character apparently is a German Jew.
His character is a German Jew, but yeah, that. He seems like Italian American because that's just kind of what Joe Pesci is, but yeah, so his
character's name's fucking like Leo something Italian, I think.
Yeah,
he just says German. I think they set up that German Jew line just so he can have that scene towards the end.
Yeah, it's very fucking strange.
It's all just so he can fucking do Mazel Tov.
So he goes and he. Because there's if you don't know, Jewish tradition of breaking a champagne glass at a wedding. I actually know it, but I forgot what it means.
Well, it's mostly like you kind of wrap it in like
you
a
wrap it
napkin or a towel
and you break it, and it symbolizes something, but I don't remember the symbolization exactly. But so he goes, and there's an elderly black man kind of walking down the hall, and he just goes and steals his pea cup that he
which I don't think are made of glass. I think those things are plastic.
It's definitely a plastic cup, and he throws it out and then he wraps it in a napkin and makes Mel Gibson break it. And I'm also wondering once again, is that Mel Gibson's fingerprints on that he's like, nah, because we'll do the Jewish tradition, but in a fucking piss cup. Hilarious. Let's just piss all over their traditions.
I'm metaphorically pissing on the Jews, you get it?
It's hilarious. The children are gonna dig it. Oh my
god, Mel Gibson wrote cat people. I didn't.
But once again, it's just it's painted in such a different light all these years later, and it's insane.
Anyway, yeah, it is. And this happens, and then they cut to the aftermath where Mel Gibson is seeing his baby for the first time, and we were wondering as we were watching this, like, did Danny Glover like take the week off?
Yeah,
like, how come
why isn't he
in
here?
And then what happens is Danny Glover comes into the scene, and apparently his daughter, who had a baby with Chris Rock, was giving birth at the exact same time because they're both in like the newborn baby room.
They are. Both babies are there.
So apparently they conceived at the same time and got pregnant at the same time and ended up having their babies at the same time.
It's a Christmas miracle.
Because we're a family.
Because oh my god! And so this movie ends with Joe Pesci almost going on another cell phone-esque rant about disposable cameras, whatever. And then they. Yeah.
Well, okay, the funniest thing about the scene, basically they have their kids and everything, and they want to get together and have like a family photo.
And then the fucking captain shows up out of nowhere, and you're like, why are you here?
Because he was in the other 3 movies, and they had to have him there. He just shows up with 2 fucking gift bags for each of the mothers, and they're like, "Oh, hey, Captain."
They're like, "No, you." And the funny thing is, they're like, "No, you come get in the picture." Besides the fact that Joe Pesci is the one that just spilled his soul about how he has no friends but Riggs and Murdoch.
They're just like, "Come on, Captain," and he keeps like going and almost taking the picture, and I almost feel like Joe Pesci was just dragging it out, trying not to take the picture, like waiting for them to ask him to come in. And then finally they do like, oh yeah, Leo, you should get in the picture too.
Yeah, and
It ends in the most ridiculous, stupid fucking way, trying to be nostalgic in a way that we are not nostalgic for these characters after this fucking movie. But the doctor asks, like, what are you guys, friends or something? And they're just like, they all together collectively say, "No, we're a family!"
Click, then we are treated to a montage
to a 10-minute long montage.
Photos of the production of these movies.
It's weird how it kind of progresses, because it starts out as it's the title scene, like the actor scene. So it's showing all the characters, just showing pictures from this movie and like giving their names and stuff like that. But then it slowly starts showing like pictures from the older movies, and then it starts showing pictures of the directors and the producers and the fucking caterers and the fucking production assistants and you know, the accountants.
Well, that was a movie. And it would really be presumptuous of us to ask for a finished script or, you know, a director directing his actors to any degree. But anywho, next week we will break our own rules for the sake of filthy lucre and review the seminal prison movie Shawshank Redemption. See you next time here at Crushed Celluloid.